Hey, welcome. Good morning. We are looking at a really interesting scene here. There's a old train trestle and an arch related to a bridge behind it that actually Interstate Route 80 crosses over. And I believe this is Cherry Creek that flows through both of those structures, connects into Broadhead Creek, and then flows into the Delaware River. Really interesting spot here. We're going to paint for a little bit. I might zoom out in my painting and capture that right side of the trestle where we have this fallen tree that's still showing signs of life, arched over a little bit. I think that's kind of interesting, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to be painting on a 7" by 5" canvas panel. We're going to be using my little handheld easel created from pencil tin. We're using yesterday's palette. So I'm going to lower my camera angle here so you can see a little bit better. So we're using thick-bodied acrylic paints, mostly from Golden, with the exception of our transparent orange oxide, which is Liquitex. But yesterday's palette, it's kept moist. We have a moist towel lining the palette, and then we spritzed the palette before we closed it and finished up our painting session yesterday. We have a little magnetic strip that we cut to size on the back of our panel, and we're going to use that to hold it into place. That and a little bit of friction. So we are ready to go. I'm going to spritz the palette a little bit just to help keep it moist while we're painting, and spritz my canvas with wool. I'm going to go ahead and use the remnant yellow, transparent orange oxide rather. Obviously there's a mixture of other paints in there because the palette's a little dirty from the work that I did yesterday. Trying to paint every day. I'm finding that painting from direct observation, ideally in nature, really is helping me in a number of ways, but artistically, just making me a better observer and editor. So, the little decisions that you make, what to leave in, what to leave out of a painting, what to move around in order to create a decent painting, and so forth. Those are all decisions you need to make very quickly when painting out in nature. You have no choice. There's no sitting on the fence when it comes to these decisions. So you can sit on your ass, part of my language, while painting, or you could stand, whatever your preference is, but you can't sit on the fence. You have to be decisive when you're painting outdoors. Definitely worth thinking about these decisions and thinking about how you go about making decisions and developing processes around that. And if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a couple of educational videos. A lot of the educational content that I produce is focused on plein air painting. But you could just search for Edgar Payne on my channel here, and that'll lead you to some videos that speak to how you go about setting up an outdoor painting like this and thinking about the design, if you will. Sorry, I bumped into my camera there while ripping off a piece of my shop towel. So here we have, speaking of Edgar Payne, with this scene, we have a natural tunnel composition which we could leverage, and it's actually a tunnel within a tunnel, because off into the distance we have that second bridge. And I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think that's what's going to be end up being the focus of this painting. And a lot of beautiful elements that will complement that. You have strong contrast in light between the darks and the light areas. You have the reflections, which also, if we do this right, we could leverage a compound composition from Edgar Payne's book, Composition of Outdoor Painting, and use some of this dappled, reflected light to create kind of like an compound S composition, which will lead you into the tunnel, and that might be an interesting thing to pursue. I'll think about that for a few seconds here, and right now I'm wondering, would it make more sense for me to make this a portrait format painting so I can capture more of the water and have more room for that, or leave it a landscape format? Sorry, I got distracted. I heard something creeping around me. Turns out it was a bug. I think for this painting, I'm gonna actually mix it up a little bit and go with this portrait format. I'm gonna move my camera a little bit so you can see. And that'll allow me to capture more of that water, which I think will serve us well. If not, it's just an experiment. You know, we're not in the business of working toward creating masterpieces here. These are little experiments in the field that help us become better painters, better observers of nature, better learners. So let me show you. I'm going to take my palette out of the way. I'm going to frame this for you. I'm going to show you actually what you see within the camera lens is pretty close to what we're going to focus on, but this is how I create my makeshift viewfinders. I take my thumb and forefingers on both hands and take a brush or a stick and use that as my viewfinder. So actually what you see in the frame of the camera is pretty much what I'm going to paint. That's pretty much what I'm going for. And that's just dumb luck. I did not plan for that at all. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz everything one more time. Just a spritz bottle, dollar store spritz bottle. And I'm going to use my shop towel here, wad it up, to indicate the lighter areas within this scene. So we have some light areas, the foliage is lit up in the background, the reflections in the water, the foliage around the bridge, and we're going to wipe away some of the paint. Oops, oh boy, the friction in the magnet didn't hold up to the pressure I was putting on my canvas, so that'll happen from time to time, and that's a-okay. All right, there we go. Get that back in there. All right, try this again. It's gonna wipe away some of the excess paint. Might be too late. I'm doing a little more talking than I normally would in these live streams. Let me adjust my camera one more time here. There we go. Wiped away that. Let's follow this process and wipe away those areas where the lighter values, lights versus darks, are registering. Twinkle there, little triangle shape there. You can kind of see what I'm going for there. And from here, I will take my little number 6 pointed round and I'm going to map out some of the darker values. I have some dark purple mixed up here, which is really just blue, red, and a little bit of black. And a little bit of orange. And we're going to use that to map out the darkest shapes within our painting. Definitely not an exercise in perfectionism, so if you had too much coffee or what have you, and you're not able to draw a straight line, there's no problem. There's going to be a lot of editing and fixing and erasing and so forth that goes on. Dark spot here, it gets dark. Exaggerate that shadow shape there a little bit. Now, some of these shadows are a little heavy-handed and it becomes darker than what you actually see. That's okay. It's a lot easier with a with an opaque or semi-opaque medium like acrylics or oil paints, for example, which are two of my primary mediums. I also work in pastel quite a bit. In all of those instances and some others, going from dark to light is much easier than the converse, going from light to dark. Not impossible, but much more difficult. You work from light to dark more commonly with transparent or semi-transparent mediums like watercolor, for example. And as far as like general ordering rules, now all rules are meant to be broken, so you certainly don't need to follow those religiously, but that's what I'm doing. Gonna work with the actual direct painting here, moving from dark to light. And just doing a little bit of drawing, creating some marks that are gonna guide me. And we have some sticks, and there's a landmark here that you might have a difficult time seeing from your point of view. On the other side of this train trestle in the water, there's these little round stones. They're referred to commonly as the stepping stones. They allow walkers and hikers to traverse Cherry Creek, even when it's swollen like it is now after some of the rains that we've had over the past couple of days. We've had some pretty big storms roll through. A tree, a couple of trees here. We got one at an angle, we got one straight up and down, we got a couple cutting across. We'll worry about those later. Don't want to create too much confusion there. Okay. Kind of see where this is going. I'm going to go ahead and mix up with even the dirty brush. I'm going to use my yellow ochre and a little bit of my, this is burnt sienna. I'm going to mix up kind of a rusty earth tone yellow, and we're going to get that over this orange, mainly in the areas that are going to be darker within the water. Kind of haphazardly just covering the canvas. I'll get a bigger brush for that, just to move things along. Ordering rules I just mentioned, light to dark, dark to light, depending upon what medium you're working within. There's ordering rules too with brush use. Generally want to use the largest brush possible and gradually work to smaller brushes, and that'll help kind of in a couple of different ways, but one of those ways is it helps you avoid the tendency to be, too precious with your painting too soon, too early. So just food for thought. Now I'm going to shut up for a little while and start making some progress on this painting. Naturally, if you have questions, feel free to comment as such. I'm not the best at responding to comments. It doesn't mean I'm ignoring you. It just means I'm a one-man band here. And I haven't mastered the art of multitasking. Probably never will. Got a little bit of this in the background. So I do see this. Got a little bit of this up top too. And maybe even in some of the stone areas. Okay. So a little painting like this, I would say on average, will take me about 40 minutes to an hour, which in my view is close to perfect because that's about the maximum my attention span will allow for. Also, the light will tend to change, weather conditions change. What I'm doing is mixing up a little bit of cad yellow and black to create our first layer of green, which is kind of like a dark desaturated sap green. And we're going to start just mapping out some of those areas. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay. Get some of this green reflected into the water, or indications of it anyway, because it's there. Especially on the left side, I'm noticing. And a little bit over here as well on the right side and toward the middle. That's the funny thing about light, it just bounces everywhere. All right, so I'm gonna get a little bit of a darker rust color going. Gonna use my burnt sienna and a little bit of cad red, a little bit of orange, and a little bit of blue. A little bit more blue. You could always color match by taking your brush that you're using to mix and hold it up against the image. Maybe a little bit of black. Desaturate this a little bit more. And I think we're close to the average hue and value on that train trestle. And we're just gonna block that in. Big shapes first. All right, now use some of that same color and make it a little bit more ochre-y. How's that for a technical color mixing term? And we're gonna go ahead and just start creating suggestion of some of these textures that make up the stones. What I'm noticing is the pillar on the left from our vantage point almost appears vertical. The pillar on the right is angled because we're seeing it from kind of almost a side view. I want to get this covered for the most part, and we'll come in and add the lighter values and suggestion of detail later. The right side's more in shadow, so we'll make it a little darker. In general. And a little bit more desaturated. And off to the left further, it gets a little darker and desaturated, and we'll get some of this color into the water as well. Lots of layers in the water. There's a little stone peeking out there. This is color and arch in the background. All right, so we're gonna get a little bit of the pre-mixed gray that we have here into that same color, desaturate it and lighten the value all at the same time. And we're gonna use this light, warm brownish gray, start building up. Some of the textures and suggestion of wear and tear on some of these stones and some of the cement. We'll even get some on the train trestle itself. And we're gonna get some, I think this might work well layered over the ochre color for the train trestle in the background, because it's nice and desaturated and cooler, so it'll push it back. It might not perfectly reflect its hue in real life, but that's okay. You don't want to be a slave to what we see, but at the end of the day, we want to create a decent painting. All right, we're gonna get some of this gray into the water. We're gonna bring a little more yellow into that pool of gray, yellow ochre that is. All right, and then we're gonna work some of that in. Same with the water. Use a suggestion of aerial perspective. The little ripples that we are suggesting with our brush strokes are smaller in the back, larger as they come forward. All right, I'm gonna shift gears here for a moment. I'm gonna go back to my number 6 round, pointed round, and we're gonna create some lighter foliage, a mix of yellow ochre, the existing color on the paintbrush, a lot of cad yellow, and we'll have a desaturated mid-tone yellowish green that we'll use right here in this puddle to start getting some of the lighter foliage color suggested here and there. Just looking at the big shapes, not worried about detail. A bit more yellow. Okay, we're getting there. It's a process. I'll take a little bit of a smaller brush now, and we're going to focus in on reinforcing some of the darkest values. And those will happen in areas where two planes meet at an angle, like where the water surface meets the bridge, where there's crevices amongst the stones that make up the train trestle. Just want to reinforce those so they don't get lost in the process and ultimately alter our painting in a way that leads us astray. I'm using primarily Mars Black. I will come over the top of this and alter this because we don't want a lot of pure black, if any, in these paintings. Excuse me, I'm just using it as a tool to control the values here, really. Excuse me. Okay. A little burnt sienna and Mars Black mixed together. Let's see, we got a larger tree coming up here. And we have a smaller tree coming straight up almost through the middle. All right, use that same mixture. And we'll just suggest some of these mortar joints and cracks. Tree growing out of the mortar crack here. A bunch of small little trees and fallen branches and stuff here. just keep working away at this process. A stick here, a little outcrop here, got some tree branches here. All right, it's coming along. Get some of that same color worked into our water. And we're gonna take a little bit more of our black and just enhance some of these shadow areas just a wee bit. This tree branch might indicate this tree branch. It might be early for this, but it's going to come in like as follows and come down and then from there and then okay, now I'm gonna mix up a little bluish green. It's gonna be light. Use some of my desaturated green and my ultramarine blue and some white. I'm gonna use this to suggest some of the bluer, maybe a little bit more white. There we go. Reflections. Get our gray going here, very light gray. What's this here? Grab the okay. Get our big old brush that we've been using for our greens, and we're gonna get a little bit of a desaturated greenish ochre color going. A little more black, a little bit more burnt sienna, a little bit blue, a little bit more yellow ochre. Let's just hold this up and see, how does that stack up? Pretty good. It might actually be a little too light, but that's okay. We'll fix that. Just want to alter the value structure here on this surface that is suggesting the water, because it's just a little too light right now in the foreground, particularly on the left and the right. Some of this onto my stone. Okay, I think we're in a pretty good position, make some good progress. I'm going to be switching to some smaller brushes and angled brushes. Excuse me. And that sort of thing for the rest of the way here. With the exception of some of the additional layers that I'll build up in the water. But we'll go ahead and let's see, where will I focus now? I'm going to focus on building up some of the lighter greens. I'll take cad yellow, a little bit of white, a little touch of blue. That's ultramarine blue. So we have a light, desaturated yellowish green. I'm gonna hold that up. I'm gonna add a little bit of cad red. And we're gonna use this to indicate some of those tree-lit areas. Or sunlit areas of foliage, I should say. Get some of that into our water because we do see it there. Before we get too far along, I'm going to start breaking in some of the sky holes where you actually see the bluish gray sky coming through. We will key off of this the rest of the way. Just to make sure that every decision we make kind of makes sense and looks like it fits with the light that would be coming from the sky up above. Include some areas, whoops, that's right, come back across. Okay, now we have some of that there. All right, we're getting close to the point where I'm going to have to call it a day just due to other obligations I have. So this might be a 2-session painting, even though it's a smaller painting. We'll see. There's no hard, fast rules. Tunnel within a tunnel. All right, so we're going to go back and reinforce some of these darker colors. A little bit of black, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre. I'm going to get this drab, kind of brownish. That orange is nice to see peeking through, but the only way that this water is gonna really sing is if I darken it a little bit. Select areas. My mouth stopped working there for a moment. Okay. Side shifting a little bit. The green is really starting to materialize on the right side now. Picking up some reflections. Water is almost as dynamic as if not more in some instances, than the sky and clouds. So, yeah, always working to figure out where you're going to land. You can't chase it forever as it changes. Okay, we're going to get some of the golden, white and a little bit of yellow ochre mixed together here. I'm gonna wipe the brush out a little bit, got a little excess paint on there. And only because I like the juxtaposition of yellow and blue. And because I see it in the reflections, I'm gonna get some of this bright colored ochre. And we do see some sunlight reflecting here off of this part of the train trestle now. We see some of these colors in the sunlit foliage. Also see translate into reflected light in the water. All right, it's getting there. Gonna reinforce, creating a little dark purple. Some of these darker shadow patterns that are found, for example, as the tree trunks and in other areas. All right, I think we are probably gonna pack it in soon. Maybe a few more touches to suggest some of the foliage. We're gonna get a nice kind of desaturated green going. for some of the foliage that's in shadow. And then we'll use that sunlit foliage and desaturate color here, and we'll desaturate it a little bit. Warm it up a little bit for some of these. Leaves that are getting lit up. Get some of that reflected into the water. I think we're good to go. Might just put a few little sparkly highlights here. I'm going to use a little bit of my cad red and pure white, and we'll create, using as light a touch as possible, just an indication of some of the brighter reflections. You could use pure white if you want to. I find that the juxtaposition of a slightly pinkish white against green helps it pop a little bit. So that's the thought process there. They're opposites on the color wheel. A little too much paint on there. And we're going to get a blue, light blue going here. A little cooler than the sky blue. And then we have a light green, slightly tinted blue series of reflections coming through here. This is exhibit A of the challenge associated with this sort of painting. The light is changing extraordinarily quickly now. There you go. So that tells me it's definitely time to wrap up. I'm at the point where I'm making marks with the intention of trying to minimize the confusion on the viewer's part, and I'm actually creating more confusion, I think. So we're gonna wrap up there. You could always come back and take another crack at finishing this off, but I think we're in pretty good shape for about an hour's long painting. Thanks for checking out my video. Check out the other content if you will. Take a look in the comments. I provide a link to my website where you can claim your free plein air checklist and also register for my blog. I won't spam you. It'll just be useful information and occasional updates regarding workshops that I'm running. Thanks for checking out my work. Have a great day. Stay